Would you like to learn about full stack development? In today's video, we will set up a rich development environment and see the tools that you need to code like a pro. Let's get started. Okay, so we're in front of a vanilla installation of Ubuntu. We're using Ubuntu and Linux because it's one of the most developer-friendly desktops that you can find. And as usual, the first time we get into a system, the first thing we should do is update the dependencies. So that's what we're going to do. We will hit Ctrl-Alt-T to bring up a terminal, sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade. Okay, with the system upgraded, we can now reboot and log back in. Okay, here we are. Let's put a password. So the next step should be to customize things to our taste. Since this is a place where we're going to spend a lot of time, it makes sense to spend a bit of time and leave things according to our taste, so we can be more productive in the long run. So first of all, here are some applications which I'm sure I won't use at all. I can get rid of them. For me, the file manager is important. Okay, what else? Let's see here in the applications, we can find again the terminal as we saw before. I would like to have this always available. So let's run it and let's pin it here on the taskbar. Also, let's pull up Ubuntu software and search for a couple of extensions. One of them is -2doc. I'm a bit more fan of having a doc with this style, which is kind of not that much invasive at the bottom of the screen. Yes, install the extension. And I also like to have do not disturb. Maybe I need to find it by this name. Yes. It is a quite simple button here that basically allows you to mute any notifications so that you can stay focused. Also, I would like to install Gnome Tweaks. Gnome Tweaks, as the name suggests, is a tool to basically configure the aspect, the UI of Gnome, which we are using, by the way, with Ubuntu. Here we go. So let's launch the application. And here we will see a few menus, but basically we're interested in the settings of the -2doc extension, which will override the doc that we already have here from Ubuntu. I would like this to be on the bottom. I would like this not to take all the space. Not sure, yes, that's it. Also, I would like not to have this animated. I mean, it's fine for me to just have a fade in to see the list of applications. What else? I would like to see the trash bin. Any volumes that I set up, it's fine to have them here. What else? Here I would like applications to minimize when I click on them. And yeah, that's pretty much a decent start point. Okay. So our applications are ready. Maybe is there something else that we may need? Yeah, maybe we can pin back down here the activity monitor. You can see the resources that you're using, your memory consumption. Okay, next up, the console, one of the most beloved tools by a developer. So the GNOME terminal is the application that you get by default. It is a pretty decent terminal, but if you're more fan of being able to customize to the extreme, you may fall a bit short on the settings that you have available here. So a lot of people, what they're doing right now is to install Terminator. Okay, so Terminator should now be available here. Let's pin it here as well. And the main difference is that we have the ability to split the terminal, to split the window into multiple environments. So for example, if I hit Ctrl-Shift-E, I will get a split, a vertical split. And I can use the Alt plus arrow key to switch the terminal. But yet when I'm here, I can also hit Ctrl-Shift-O, and this will split the part of the screen in which I am horizontally. So you can continue, you can readjust the size if you want, and you can even start moving the small terminals around to your convenience and to your taste. You can have Htop running here while you have the list of segments here, and you have BI in here. It is quite a powerful console that you can customize also because you can set many more preferences than you could with GNOME Terminal. While GNOME Terminal is focused in simplicity and maybe I should say design, Terminator is more focused on you to work basically on the terminal all day long. So yeah, you get the idea. I can just hit Ctrl-D and start closing the terminals that I got. Another thing that I personally do is customizing the key bindings. In my case, I don't like the default key bindings that you get in Linux, which are Ctrl-Shift-C and Ctrl-Shift-V. So I can select the text in here, Ctrl-Shift-C and V. I think it's a bit awkward, in my opinion. So one of the things that I tend to do is customizing these as well. So I can go here, key bindings, and look for Command C or Super C, for example. Paste, where is it? What else? Also Super T to open a new tab. That should be it. But what's the issue now? Now I can copy with no issue, but if I hit Command V, what happens is that the system menu drops down. So what I should do next is go to the system settings, to the GNOME settings, and disable this key binding. Let's go to devices, keyboard, shortcuts. And then around here, I should be able to find Super V and then hit backspace to disable it. So if I get back here and hit Command C and Command V, here you have it. In my opinion, a much more convenient way to use the key bindings. So yeah, that's it for the terminal. It is up to you to decide which one you use. So yeah, let's move on. I would like to install a tool that I find myself using quite often, which is curl. So let's install it. Install curl. Let's type in the password. Curl is the equivalent of wget, which you probably have installed already in your distribution. As you can see, if I run curl, what I do is just fetching the contents of a remote endpoint and display them on the screen. So if I run curl https://api.myp.com, what I get here is the actual raw data from as the JSON that I get in the response. Whereas if I run wget with the same URL, https api.myp.com, what's going to happen is that wget is going to download it, as you can see here. So that's one of the tools that you should have in your toolbox. Next up, let's talk about the shell. There are many shells that you can choose from. By default, you will most likely get Bash. It is a standard shell. It is quite powerful. But Me personally, I find myself using another shell, which is called fish. It is a quite standard shell. There are tons of things that you can do with it. But me personally, I'm slightly more fan of fish. That's a matter of taste, but I will show you real quick. By the way, even if you're using bash or fish, one of the things that you'll be using all the time are aliases. So for example, in my case, it's almost an instinctive thing to do, just hitting L, enter, to list the files of the folder in which I am. So what happens is that getting only the names is not something that I'm comfortable with, so I would like to have something like this. So I'd like to list the files with human readable sizes and have color like we saw here above, and have the slash at the end if we're dealing with a folder instead of a file. But instead of having to type this every time, what I can do is set up an alias. So L is now equivalent to this. And that's a productivity booster for me, even if it's quite a simple thing to do. But what happens if now I close my session and log back in? If I hit L again, I get the same behavior that I had. So let's customize for that the bash rc file. As you see here, I don't have Beam installed. I will do with vi so far, and see in here we already have an alias for L, which I will simply update. HGF. And so when now I start the session again and I hit my instinctive command, I will get my desired thing without having to type every time the long command or whatever command it is. But as I said, I am much more comfortable with fish. The fish shell can be installed as simply as this. Sudo apt install fish in Ubuntu. Okay, so if I run fish, here we are into our new session. What are the differences? They are subtle, but they are important, I think. For example, if now I want to change the shell, fish already provides me autocompletion with meaningful colors to tell me whether the command is correct or not. And also, if I run the command to change the shell, the default shell, so that I always use fish, when I start typing slash, if I hit tab, I will get the autocompletion of valid shells that I can use. So I don't have to find it myself, it's already here for me to choose from. More things that you can do, for example, when I do ls, it provides me with the autocomplete, because this is within the history. For example, let's list the documents folder. There's nothing on it yet. But for example, if we get within the downloads folder and I start typing ls again, it will not offer me to autocomplete the command as I did before. If I start writing doc and I hit tab, nothing will happen. So yeah, these are very small things. For example, I can start typing ch, and if there were more commands in our history, we could just hit up arrow or down arrow to work through. But here, if we're happy with the autocompletion that Fish is suggesting us, we can just hit the right arrow, and here you are. What else can you do with Fish? The configuration file, the equivalent for Fish for bash rc would be .config.fish.config.fish. And then here, let's define a simple function. A function is more powerful than an alias. An alias is simply a text substitution, but the function allows you to deal with dynamic content. For example, if I wanted to set up the L for list files equivalent function, what I would do in here is to, for example, use ls with the parameters and then $argv. This means append any parameters that are given. And so now if I run L, nothing's going to happen because I need to log back again for the changes to have effect. So let's start again. Now my shell is already fish, and if I hit L, here is my function. It is not an alias, it is a function. So what else can we do? We can do more elaborate stuff in a scripting style. We could edit this file and add another function, for example, to know our IP address. So function myIP, and now let's use what we installed before, curl https api.myip.com, and see what we get. So let's execute the configuration that we just provided. Config fish config. Now if I hit my IP, I get the JSON. Wouldn't it be cool to have just the IP instead of the full payload? For that we should install JQ, which is a JSON parser that allows us to do basic filtering of JSON payloads, as you will see in a minute. So now, for example, if I run my IP and I pipe this into JQ, I would see the prettified version of it. But if I tell it to display the .ip field, what I will get is just the IP. So let's work on this for a second. vi.config. So yeah, let's go to the end. Let's pipe this to JQ and filter this field. And also let's have curl running in the silent mode, -s. And let's run source to execute again the config so we can run my IP. And voila, here is our IP address. So you get the idea. What's next? Next, I would like to install Vim. Vim is one of the most powerful text editors out there. VI is fine because it's quite minimal, but sometimes I feel like it falls short. So let's customize it a bit for us. So let's edit the .vimrc file, which is the configuration file for Vim. Let's enable syntax. Well, it is enabled by default, so no need to add it. What else? Let's set the tab stop to, for example, 3. Let's also set expand tab so that when we hit tab, we get spaces instead of a tab character. I also like to have set highlight search. So when I search for something, it is there. You can get rid of it if you don't need it because it's set by default. What else? I also like to have a nice status bar in here. So for that, I do the following. It is a bit of boilerplate. I will copy it on the video's description. But you need to do a couple of things. Set line status equals to, and then set status line equals %f percent equals, so write percent. Here you go. And in just a second, you will see how it looks like. So if we get back in again, we see the name of the file that we're editing. We see the encoding of the file. And we also see the column, the line, and the total number of lines of the file that we're in. There's much more than you can do with Vim. We would need probably a video alone to talk about this. But this is a quick way to have an enjoyable experience. And, you know, feel free to comment on the video if you have interesting settings to share. Cool. So next up, what about swap? What about memory? In our Linux box, by default, we get a total of 4 gigabytes of physical memory, and we also have 2 gigabytes of swap. As you can see, we're using a swap file, which is located on the root folder, but 2 gigabytes may not be so much if you're compiling. So before you get out of memory, you should at least have some extra swap. How do you do this? It is quite a standard procedure to follow. You can just follow me. So you start by allocating the file that you want to use. So I will run allocate-l, let's say 4 extra gigabytes, and then the name of the file, which would be swapfile-1. Next up, let's copy empty data into it. So we will use dd input file equals def0, which is a character device that just yields 0 data. Output file would be our new swap file. Block size would be 4 kilobytes, and the number of blocks, here should be an equal, and the number of blocks would be. So now we are copying basically zeros from the character device of the system into our swap file. Right next, we should restrict the permissions to this file, because this is memory of the system and we don't want anyone to have access to it but the system. So change mod 60. This is only the root user can actually have access to it. Swap file 1. Okay, right. So now let's format the swap file with a swap file system. mkswap swap file 1. Okay. And then we could just move on and actually enable it swap on, and then the swap file that we have. So now if we run 3-megabyte instead of 4 gigabytes that we got before, we would get 6, which is an improvement. What happens if we now reboot the system? We would get back to the 2 gigabytes of memory. So we should tell the system to remember our settings. For that, we will edit the fstab file. And if we go here at the bottom, we see that we already have the definition for the existing swap file. So I will just copy this line and add the very same thing for our file. Okay, so ready to move on. If you have to be installing external libraries or things like that, you'll need to compile or to have access to development libraries. In most cases, in Debian or Ubuntu systems, it is as simple as installing build essential, which I think it is installed actually by default in this system. But you basically get access to GCC, you get access to CPP, make. The typical traditional Unix tools are there available for you, so you should not worry about that. Another tool like curl, which I think it's useful to have, is Netcat. What it does is it allows you to connect to remote machines directly. So for example, now here I can listen -l to localhost on port 8080. And then if I open another terminal here, I could connect to the very same port, localhost 8080, but this could be on any other machine of your network. So now I can type whatever random text that I want from either side, and you can see that both screens react. This is quite useful if you want to share very simple information. The only thing that you need to do is simply open a port, put some data into it, and there you have it. Next up, what can we use? We have Htop by default, which is the equivalent to the system monitor, but in the text version. Sometimes you don't want to open system monitor for a powerful process inspection tool, but yet Htop falls a bit short. So what you can do is run sudo apt install Htop, which is a much improved version in which you could even use the mouse if you wanted to. So here we have it. Not only we get the list of processes, we can even scroll using the mouse or the trackpad. We get the CPU core usage. We can sort by columns simply using the mouse. We can even filter by the name of the processes. So yeah, you get the idea. We can hit Q to quit. Next up, we're most likely going to use Git. If you're a developer, you need Git. Yes. So here it is. But yet, if you want to inspect the commits and the content that you have been working with, you could also install GitG, which is basically graphical front end for you to navigate the commit history, see the branches, the differences. All you need to do is to simply open up the application. You can clone a repository if you have the URL, or you can add an existing folder in the computer, which we don't have yet. If you need to exchange sensitive information with other people through untrusted channels, a very easy way to encrypt your data is by using GPG. GPG allows you to do a lot of things, but one of the simplest ones that you can do is, for example, let's edit a dummy file. Hello world. And then let's encrypt this file so that we can send over the network that we don't trust. So we would type gpg -- symmetric. The shell autocompletes the parameter for us, symmetric, and then the name of the file that we just created. The system is going to ask us for a password and confirm once again. And here is our encrypted file. If we try to open it, as you can see, we have binary garbage that we can't understand at all. So in order to decrypt, we would do gpg -decrypt -output file text.decrypted, for example, and then the encrypted file that we want to decrypt. So here you go. As you can see, it doesn't ask us for the password because we already typed in before, and it kind of stays in memory, so we don't need to type it again. So if we list again, we get the decrypted file. And there you go. Hello world. Okay, what else? Web browser. By default, we get Firefox. It is a modern, powerful open source browser. In my case, I like to squeeze as many pixels of the screen as I can, because this is a laptop. One thing I do here is disable the title bar, and as you can see, I get this black header in here, which doesn't bring anything to me. But if you need to be doing JavaScript development, you may find that browsers based in Chromium or Google Chrome are faster and are a bit more convenient. So you can just install Google Chrome from here, or Chromium, which is the open source alternative. But in my case, I prefer to use Brave. Brave is based on the very same engine as Google Chrome, but the difference is that you get a lot of privacy and anonymity add-ons by default. So to do that, you need to go to the Brave website and simply follow the steps. You need to copy a few commands and go to the docs page. So here it is. We're running Debian, Ubuntu. Let's copy this. We already installed curl before. Next, we need to add the keys for the new repository that we're going to use. Then we need to add the repository itself, and then simply update the package database and install the new package that we have available. Brave is quite fast. It is as fast as Google Chrome, but beyond the developer experience of the DevTools, you get the extra layer of ad blocking, privacy concerned people get ad trackers that are blocked, you know. Okay, so Brave is installed. Let's see, in our applications menu, we have the icon, which we can pin down here. And voila. You have a Chrome-based browser, but running with the extra layer of features that you can discover by yourself. So let's do the same thing, but with the code editor. I think that by default, you can use Ubuntu software to install one of the most popular ones, which is VS Code. It is an open source editor from Microsoft. It is web-based. It runs on top of the Chromium engine, actually. You could go in here and install it, but kind of the same as with Chrome, I like to use an alternative, which is VS Codium. VS Codium is entirely based in Visual Studio Code, but it is 100% open source, and it doesn't have the Microsoft branding, and it doesn't have the telemetry that VS Code provides. For the rest, it's very much the same, but to install it, you should copy the commands in a similar way as we did before. So there you go. Same as before, we add the key to the keyring of our system. Then we add the line to declare the new repository, and we finally update the database and install the new package. Okay, there is. Let's see it on the applications menu. There you go, VS Codium. We can launch it from here, but we could also launch it from the console. So same as you would do, for example, Vim text to edit a text file, you could run Codium text, and you would be editing this very same file. There are also things that you can do. For example, if you're working in a workspace with different projects and different folders, what you can do is simply run Codium document in this case, which is the folder I have. And the editor would open the actual folder, which has no files yet. Let's create a dummy file in here. Documents, text1, text2. So we would be opening this folder, the entire folder, but then we can run Codium-A for add and add another folder. So now we would have one folder in the workspace for one project and the other folder independently, but we could be switching from the one to the other easily without having to open many windows and consuming memory and resources. So that's it for VS Code. There are other alternatives worth mentioning. You may find a lot of people that use Atom as the editor, and also some people that use Sublime text. It is slightly older, but yet it is a quite powerful editor that you can customize as much as you can with plugins. But it's really up to you. My recommendation is use VS Codium, but you'll be fine with whichever one you choose. Okay, so what's next? A tool that I use to exchange files within computers from the same network is called Nitroshare. So let's see if it is available here. Nitroshare. If I can spell it properly. Search Nitroshare. Okay, right, here it is. So sudo apt install Nitroshare. Yes. So if we look for it on the applications folder, here it is. When you open it, it simply opens the try icon within your desktop. And since this computer is the only one in my network, I can't show it to you. But now we could simply select one file from our computer and send the destination computer. So we could have two computers on the same network and be exchanging files without the need to set up AirDrop or without the need to enable Samba on any of those computers. But yet you get the idea. Okay, so now we're ready to start installing SDKs, frameworks, and so on. The first one that I would like to mention is NodeJS. If we type node here, we see that the command is not installed. And actually the system suggests to use apt to install it. However, if we look, you can see that we would get version 10.15, which is slightly outdated. We can go here to nodejs.org. And in the official website, we see that the latest version is 13.3 as opposed to 10.15. And even the long-term support version is the 12.13. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download the long-term support package. I'll go to the downloads folder, and once it is ready, I will run tar extract file node.js. I will cd into it, and then within this folder we have the bin folder and the lib folder. We need to copy these three files, which are the executable ones, into the system path. And to do this, we will run sudo move bin /*, and we will move these files to user local bin. So now I could run node from the path and see that it works. But we also need to move node modules. And to do this, we will do move lib.modules, and we will move this to user local lib. And we should run this as sudo again. What is the next thing that I would do? I would do sudo npm install -g for global n. So we will install an npm package, which is called n, in the global library. And what n allows us to do is basically to install new versions. So let's, for example, try to install the latest version as sudo. So what n will do, it will fetch from the official website. And now we have 13.3. So in this case, we do not depend on apt to install the latest version of packages, and we can actually move back and forward as much as we want. 12.13.1. There you go. And here is our long-term support version. Okay, Python comes pre-installed by default. It is quite similar to Node.js. You can run the same kind of commands as you would run in the REPL with Node.js. So what else? Let's look at another language that a lot of people use to develop servers and backends, which is Go. For Go, we will do the same as we did before. We will rely on the package that we can find on the website. We will download the package for Linux. And here we get actually the commands that we need to run. As they suggest, these commands install the package within the system folder, but we don't have permission, so we will run this as sudo. And this will install Go into /user local, quite similarly as we did with Node.js. So this is a system application, and we need administrator permissions to run it. So another thing that we should check is whether this is on the path or not. So in this case, Go is not within the path, so we should see where it is. Let's see, user local Go bin, And then here we have the two binaries that we may want to use. So to change the path with fish, we would do vim config fish config. And to set the path here, we should set the environment variable path, which equals to the previous path that we had before, and user local go bin, which is the folder in which we have the new Go installation. So if we source the configuration file so that it makes effect immediately, now we can run Go and Go format. Okay, so we are ready with Go, Node.js and Python. What would be next? In my case, I do a lot of mobile development and specifically Android development. And for this, the must-have is Android Studio. Yet, in this case, you have two options. One of the options is go to Ubuntu software and look for Android Studio. That's the easy way to go, but Android Studio is rather large. And if you're into hybrid development, or if you're using frameworks like Flutter, for example, or React Native, most likely you need this tool. So it is totally fine to go and install it, and then you should follow the wizard, which will tell you to install the libraries and to install the emulators and so on. But in my case, what I like to do is to follow a manual way. I have here a text file with just the things that we need. So let's copy these lines. By the way, I will copy them on the video description, don't worry about that. Let's clean the console, copy this, which is the version that we're going to use. We're going to use bash for this. So these are the versions. First, we need to install Java. And we should run it as sudo. Okay, so Java is available for us, yet I will do the rest of things actually as the root user, so let's log in as such. We're going to install everything on /user local ADK, so let's create the folder and then do these steps, basically fetching, unpacking. Yeah, I need to set the variables again within the root session. So once again, download, extract, and remove a package with the SDK tools and the platform tools later on. Do the same thing. Then we will run the SDK manager to accept all the licenses. They are all accepted, which is fine. Then we will also run the SDK manager to install these packages. So what we're installing here is the build tools for the given version, platform tools, the NDK, which is useful if you're developing native applications, we need to use a specific API, the LLDB compiler, and CMake. This is useful if you need external libraries that you need to link natively. This process may take a while, but at least we have the commands to do exactly what we want instead of having to wait for the wizards and the setups. There you go. So we have this component. And then the last step is to put everything available for us. So we will link these two binaries, so they are available from the user bin path. And also we will give the user permissions so that the user can install and have specific data in here. And the last step would be to set up the Android home variable, which is empty by default. So let's go to our fish configuration file and appending here set Android home, and let's make it point to /user local Android development kit. Once again, let's source our new configuration and let's echo Android home, which is now pointing to the appropriate location. We also get to use ADB, which is the Android developer bridge, which allows us to transfer information, to exchange data with the phone, install applications. And yeah, and here we have basically a working Android environment. What's next? As I said before, I work a lot with Flutter, which is a framework to develop mobile applications. It is also expected that it will allow to work with websites as well as desktop applications. But in my case, I use a lot for mobile development. So let's install the SDK here. The only thing we need to do is simply download this *xz. And once it is ready, go to the downloads folder. It is not there yet. There you go. So let's extract it. tar, extract a file, Flutter Linux. There you go. So unlike Go, for example, what Flutter is suggesting us to do is to use our home folder as the base installation, whereas, for example, in Go, we install it on /user local Go, for example. However, Flutter is telling us to do this, move Flutter to the home folder. In my case, I would like to do it elsewhere. Specifically, I will create a dev folder, and then on this dev folder, I will move the Flutter folder. So here it is, and then within Flutter, we have the bin folder, and here is the binary that we care about. So for that, we need to update the fig configuration to update the path. So let's do that once again. Let's update the path variable, set path equals to the previous path, and then we append our home folder /dev/flutter/bin. And to make the changes have effect, so Flutter is ready to go. So this wraps pretty much all that we need to install as a developer. As for the system tools, the last thing that I would do is open VS Code, the editor, and install a few extensions. VS Code by itself provides a very capable set of features, but the magic comes with extensions. In our case, we are going to add extensions like Flutter, which allows us to debug mobile applications from the own IDE. We will also install Go, the Golang plugin from Microsoft. It provides all sorts of code formatting, IntelliSense, debugging, so you should probably use it if you're targeting Go. Other extensions like Python, I guess. Yeah, so here you go. Also the official extension from Microsoft. What else? Other extensions that I find them to be quite helpful are, for example, to do tree. So normally within your code, when you have something that's unfinished, you would typically put / to do to remind you to do something. To do tree groups all of these to dos across your code base so that you can find them much more easily. Another cool extension is called bracket colorizer. Quite useful if you work with languages in which you have a lot of indentation. So you know exactly what parentheses, what bracket you're opening and closing. Another extension that you may find useful if you're working with Docker. Also the official one. And yeah, you can basically explore by yourself. There are tons of wonderful extensions. Feel free to explore them yourself. And yeah, we're good to go. So that wraps pretty much everything that you would typically need on a productive Linux environment. On the next episode, we will be talking about NodeJS and how to start coding services that can run on the network. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you're interested in more, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until then, sticker.